Hi everyone, it's Marisa from BumblebeeApothecary.com, and today I'm sharing with you a What We Eat in a Week video. So for the first night, we are having a beef roast. So I'm putting that into my cast iron Dutch oven. I am adding some coarsely cut up onions. I just pretty much peel them and cut them in half for a long, slow cook time like this. Sprinkling on some black pepper, adding some bay leaves, and then I like to add the filtered water. Whenever we're having a roast, I like to go ahead and add filtered water, especially when it's a bone-in one, because then you get meat stock along with it, and that just really helps to stretch the meal farther in a really nutritious way, because as we know, meat stock has such great benefits. So after I have added everything, then I will add the salt, because I feel like I can gauge exactly how much salt is going to go into the meat stock after the water is already in there. So you can see that the top of the roast is kind of sticking above the water, which I think makes it delicious, because then you get the best of both worlds. You get the meat stock, and then you also get that nice braised sort of top part of the roast when it's exposed out of the water. So I'm just adding the mineral salt after everything else is in there. So again, I have the roast, pepper, onions, bay leaves, mineral salt, filtered water. And then this is going into the oven. So I put the lid on, put it into the oven at 275 is usually my favorite temperature for something like this. And I aim for usually a 6-hour cook time. Then about 2 to 1.5 hours before we plan to eat, I pull the roast out of the oven and then I add the carrots. I find that if I add the carrots at the beginning, it's okay, and I will do this if I'm going to be, for example, out of the house all day and I need just everything done at once. But I find that if they're in there for that long of a cook time, they end up sort of flavorless. So I like adding them more like an hour and a half to 2 hours before it's time to eat if I'm home and have that option, which I usually am. So I have my son helping me with his little kid-safe knife. So we're peeling carrots, chopping the ends off, and then adding those. And then once those are added, we're going to put the lid back on and stick it back into the oven for the rest of the cook time. And then I'm also doing some potatoes. So since some of us are following gaps and some of us are not, I'm not going to include the potatoes in there with everything else. I'm going to do them separately. So I have my smaller cast iron pot with a lid. I'm putting some beef tallow in the bottom there and just tossing the potatoes in, adding a lid, and then putting that into the oven to cook as well. So I'll usually make sure that those have a good 2 hours to cook. All right, and then the roast cook time is complete, so I'm going to go ahead and take that out and serve it up. So we're just having the roast, some of the cooked carrots and onions alongside, some potato, which we will crush with a fork and put a bunch of butter on top. We have the meat stock to serve in cups alongside, and then for our fermented food, we're adding some sauerkraut. For day 2's dinner, we are going to put some butternut squash into the oven to bake, and then I am mixing up some meatloaf. So I have ground beef in a bowl, some eggs, some onion powder, and then some tomato paste, and some salt and pepper to taste. I'm mixing that all together with my hands, and then just spreading it out flat into a pan, and then I'll put that into the oven to bake. I usually do 400 degrees Fahrenheit for the oven temperature, and then a cook time of usually between 45 minutes to an hour. I just check on it after 45 minutes and see if it needs a little more time or not, or oftentimes it's done at 45 minutes. To go alongside the meatloaf, I am sauteing some green beans in butter, so I have those going in my pan on the stove, and my helper is going to stir those for me as they start to cook. Now everything is done cooking. Something I love about doing the butternut squash and the meatloaf together is that they have a similar cook temperature and cook time, so I can put them in there together, and then a little later on start the green beans, and then pretty soon everything is done. So I'm going to serve this up. We have our meatloaf, sauteed green beans in butter, butternut squash, and we'll put a bunch of butter on that as well. And then for our fermented food, we are having some fermented beets. For day 3, I am cooking a leg of lamb in the stove. So I'm following loosely kind of Dr. Natasha's Italian casserole recipe from her GAPS book. I do want to also apologize to you guys for my voice. I'm kind of getting over a cough sort of a thing, and so my voice is not the best, and it sounds like it's gonna kind of deteriorate, but I'm gonna do my best here. So I apologize for that. But I'm doing a leg of lamb, so a big joint of lamb in my cast iron Dutch oven. I am cutting up or peeling an onion and adding that, so just cut coarsely in halves or quarters is what I will usually do. And then I also want to add some rosemary, so instead of having the rosemary loose in there, I like to put it into these little tea balls, and that way you don't have to worry about straining out the bits of rosemary later. And then I'm going to add filtered water, some black pepper, some mineral salt, so that way you get nice delicious meat stock. I'm also adding a bunch of garlic cloves as well, because garlic is a wonderful flavor to pair with lamb, I find. And then I'm putting the lid onto this as best I can, and then sticking this into the oven, 275 degrees, again aiming for a 6-hour cook time with this one as well. And then about a couple hours before we plan to eat, I'm pulling the leg of lamb roast out of the oven, peeling some carrots, and then adding those just with the ends cut off whole, and putting it back into the oven to finish the cook time. When the leg of lamb is pretty close to being finished, then I'm going to start sauteing some peas in butter. So I just have those in one of my cast iron pans on the stove with some butter, and these in a cast iron pan cook up very quickly, so they're a quick, easy little side dish to add. Okay, and now the leg of lamb is ready to come out of the oven, so I'm just going to slice some pieces of that to serve it up. Serve it alongside carrots, cups of meat stock with it, and then peas alongside. And then for fermented food, we're having some of our homemade sauerkraut, and then of course, like I said, cups of meat stock alongside. For day 4, I'm doing a little bit more of an involved dinner. It's fun to do these sometimes, and I'll pick these on a less busy day when I have a little bit more time and I just want to make something a little bit different and more, involved and fun. So today I'm going to be doing Swedish meatballs. So I have my yellow potatoes that I'm just coarsely chopping into like 6 pieces or whatever, and I have those in some filtered water that I'm bringing to a boil, letting those cook until they're nice and soft, and I'll be mashing those into mashed potatoes. For people who are not eating potatoes, another really nice option is riced cauliflower. And then I have my meat mixture for the meatballs. I have ground beef. You can also do a combination of beef and pork, but I'm just doing beef today. And then to that, I'm adding some salt, pepper, some nutmeg, and some allspice and eggs, mixing that all together. And then I'm forming that into meatballs and then putting those onto a pan. And once I have all those formed, I'm going to bake these in the oven at 400 degrees for 22 minutes. To go alongside the meatballs and mashed potatoes, I'm going to saute some broccoli in some butter. So I have my helper here helping me stir that broccoli while it's cooking. And then the potatoes are ready to mash. So I've drained the water, and then I am adding some butter, lots of butter, some raw milk, some salt and pepper to taste, and then just mashing those with my hand mixer to get them nice and light and fluffy. And then I'm also going to make the gravy to go along with the meatballs. So I have some meat stock. This is lamb meat stock left over from another dinner. Lamb or beef or something like that. Even chicken, to be honest, would work. But I'm using lamb since that's what I have. So I have that. I have some arrowroot powder and butter in my pan on the stove, adding meat stock to that. Salt and pepper to taste, and then some cultured cream. Cooking that all up, and then I'll add the meatballs to the gravy. and then it is ready to serve up. So we have our broccoli, our mashed potatoes, our meatballs and gravy, and then for our fermented food, I have some fermented cranberries that I'm having alongside. For day 5, I'm going to be making some country style pork ribs. So again, I have my trusty cast iron Dutch oven, and I'm putting my pork ribs into that pan. I am just adding some salt and pepper at this point, and then putting them into the oven at a nice low temperature, 250 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 4 hours total is what I will do. But I will pull them out closer to the time when it's time to serve them and show you what else I'm going to do with them. To go alongside the pork ribs, I'm slicing up some potatoes. I have red potatoes here, and I have this fun crinkle cut slicer that slices them with this neat texture that just adds a really nice touch. So I've been having fun using that for different things. So I'm just slicing those up, and then I have my deep fat fryer with beef tallow in it, so that I'm adding those to fry the potatoes. And then alongside, I'm also going to do some green beans sauteed in butter. So I'm going to get those going as well. So by now the green beans are finished cooking, so I'm just letting them sit in their pan, and then the potatoes are coming out of the deep fat fryer. So I'm putting those into a bowl, and then I'm just adding some mineral salt on those. And then at this point, the ribs are ready to come out of the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and serve everything up. So the only thing that I did differently is I did take the lid off of the cast iron Dutch oven about an hour before they were going to be done, and just let it cook for a little bit that way. I did not add any barbecue sauce while they're cooking because my youngest is not really eating barbecue sauce or things like that quite yet. So I wanted to have the option to not have it with barbecue sauce. So we're just going to add some barbecue sauce for the rest of us right before we eat it as I'm serving. So I'm going to go ahead and serve that up with our green beans, our fried potatoes, our pork ribs, of course, that I'm going to top with some all natural unsweetened barbecue sauce, and then some sauerkraut on the side. For day 6, I'm going to do a beef stew, and again, using my trusty cast iron Dutch oven. I have some beef neck bones here, so they're still a little bit frozen. I have things to defrost in my outside refrigerator, but this time of year, with the weather being so cold, they don't always defrost as well as I would like them to. So they're still a little bit frozen, but I'm just pushing them down into the Dutch oven. So these are, again, beef neck bones, and then I also have a package of beef stew meat that I'm adding with them just to add a little bit more meat to the stew. And then I'm cutting up some onions, adding some garlic cloves, some bay leaves, some pepper, filtered water, mineral salt to taste, and then putting the lid on that and putting it into the oven. I like a temperature of 270 degrees Fahrenheit for something like this, and then aiming for like a 5 to 6 hour cook time. About an hour or so before the stew is going to be ready, before we want to eat, I'm going to go ahead and peel some carrots and cut those up to add. I am also going to add some other vegetables. So I'm adding the carrots right to the stew. I'm also chopping up some green beans and adding those. I'm adding some peas. I'm adding some, not adding. So again, we have some people who are on GAPS and some who are not. So I would like to have the main version be a GAPS version of the beef stew. And then for the rest of us that are not on GAPS, I am cooking up some potatoes and then adding some organic corn as well, separately in some filtered water on the stove. So I'm just letting these cook until they're nice and cooked through on their own on the stove. And then I will be able to add this to the stew after I've taken some out for the people who are not eating potatoes and corn. So then the other thing that I added to the beef stew before serving it So basically this is for my youngest who's not eating tomatoes yet, and he's on GAP, so he's not having potatoes and corn either. So what I did was I took out his portion of stew that he's going to have, and then after I did that, I stirred in some tomato paste and then added the corn and potatoes. So then that completed beef stew had all of the ingredients with his version removed without the things that he's not eating. So here's the finished stew, just a really hearty, delicious, very flavorful, warm, nourishing beef stew that is so good on these really cold winter nights. And then for day 7, we are doing one of our favorite dinners that we like to do that also happens to be a pretty easy dinner that doesn't require a lot of planning or anything when you use these options. So I am doing burgers. So I have my burger patties. These are the grass-fed beef burger patties that can be cooked from frozen, so it makes it super easy. I also have some organic pre-cut fries to make French fries in my deep fat fryer with beef tallow. We are also having the burgers, some of us, the ones that are eating grains, are having some sprouted spelt sourdough buns. So I have those that I'm slicing. I'm slicing cheese to get ready to put onto the burgers when I flip them so that that can melt. I'm also making some vanilla milkshakes to go alongside the burgers. So I have raw milk in there, some maple syrup, some vanilla extract, little pinch of mineral salt, and then whizzing that up in my blender. And then to freeze it, I'm adding it to my ice cream maker just to start getting it sort of frozen to be a nice milkshake consistency. And then as my burgers are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and flip them, add the cheese so that that can start melting. Another thing that I like to do is to stick my burger buns into the oven so that they can warm, usually like a 300-degree Fahrenheit oven for a little bit just so they can warm through, because I do store them in the refrigerator, so then that just makes them tastier. Once everything is ready, it's time to go ahead and plate everything up. If you've been with me before, you might notice that I love to pile on the animal fat every chance that I get. It just makes me feel so good when I include a lot of it. So I go ahead and stick a nice big thing of butter onto the burger bun, and then I go ahead and add the burger with the melted cheese on it. And then I'm also serving up some of the French fries cooked in beef tallow. I like to put some unsweetened ketchup on there. We're out of pickles right now, so instead of fermented pickles, we're just putting on some of our sauerkraut, which works great, still very tasty. And then I forgot to show this in filming, but I always like to have lettuce on my burgers too, but I realized I forgot to show this. I realized it about partway through eating it, and then I went ahead and added some lettuce at that point, so I'm just not showing it here. But I have that there, and then my milkshake, vanilla milkshake along the side. I hope that you guys enjoyed coming along to see a week of dinners, and I hope that you found it fun, interesting, hopefully inspiring. Be sure and check out that description box for links to a lot of the places where I like to buy the different foods that we like to enjoy, as well as links to free ebooks and other goodies. I actually have a brand new meal plan that I just released not that long ago that is a Wise Traditions style meal plan. So many of you know that I have a GAPS meal plan, and then this is another one, a Wise Traditions one for people who are just ready for a full Nourishing Traditions or Weston A. Price style diet. It's a 4-week meal plan, and then I also have another version of a meal plan where it takes you from however you are eating now to a gradual, easy transition to a Wise Traditions diet, and then all the way into full GAPS if you want. You don't even have to go that far into full GAPS if you don't want to. So I have both of those options of my new meal plans already. I'll have those in the description box down below, so be sure and check those out if you're interested. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with anybody else who you think might want some new dinner time inspiration. And if you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I get out new videos every week on nourishing recipes and natural living. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.